How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about the Creepshow animated special. This is for the Shudder TV series and came out in 2020. This episode was directed by Greg Nicotero, and the animation directors were Adam Martin and Eben Matthews. This episode stars Kiefer Sutherland, who you guys, if you're horror geeks, you know him for things like The Lost Boys and Flatliners. The other episode stars Joey King. Joey King, a lot more new stuff. Wish Upon, Slender Man, and Blumhouse's Amazon Prime thing, The Lie. So, a much younger and newer actress that's still been in a lot of horror stuff. But this adapts two short stories. Stephen King's Survivor Type, so cool to see Creepshow adapting another Stephen King story, and also Twittering from the Circus of the Dead from Joe Hill. So Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, really cool to see them do a father-son collaboration. I think they've worked together before in The Tall Grass, and wasn't there a graphic novel, Full Throttle or something? So they work together every now and then. And cool to see them adapting two of their stories. And also keep an eye out for animated cameos from these two. They're stuck in the story. But anyway, this was from 2020, so I'm wondering if they came up with an idea to do an animated special because of the pandemic, and they're like, hey, we need to do a Creepshow thing, so let's do an animated thing because that's something we can have people do from home. And it's an interesting experiment, but it is a little different than you might think, and I think that's one of the first things is you guys should know what exactly this is. I thought it would be Creepshow, but it's just a regular cartoon. But these are different. The two actors, Kiefer Sutherland and Joey King, primarily do the whole story by themselves. It's very much like if they were to do an audiobook performance. They're narrating the whole thing, and a lot of this episode is big blocks of text from the story. Obviously, they altered them a little bit to be a teleplay, so it's not a perfect audiobook, but it is voiceover with animation behind it, so it is about an audio performance, and each story has like one or two additional voices, but those are just for like really, really tiny things there. This is primarily a single actor performance, so right off the bat we're a little different than I thought. And then the other thing too is this is done in the motion comic style. See, I expected it would be just a standard animation or whatever, but this is the motion comic style. Basically, in the past there had been comic books, and they animated these comic books by taking these really good drawings and moving them around digitally, and in turn with the motion comic style is you get a lot more lines and a lot more detail in these drawings than you would normally get, but the animation isn't quite as smooth and it doesn't quite move all over the place. So higher drawings, but less on the animation front. Now that of course initially took me aback, but then I'm like, you know, Creepshow is a comic book show, you know, even though there was never a real Creepshow comic beforehand. It was really heavily inspired by Tales from the Crypt and Creepy and stuff like that. So to do a comic, to do an animation in the style of a motion comic for a TV series based on a movie inspired by comic books, I guess somehow this all makes sense. I don't know. The idea that it's essentially an audiobook played over a motion comic was different than I expected, and it took me a minute to kind of go, okay, this is what we're doing. But once I understood, once I got on board, I found myself falling into it. But this isn't just a standard cartoon. This isn't just, you know, fun animation, which I was kind of expecting and hoping it to be. But for what it is, as like interesting interpretations of these short stories from these writers, you know, hey, you throw me a Stephen King project, you know, even if it's not the biggest, most elaborate thing ever, it's a really good reading of a Stephen King story and a Joe Hill story, and plus some good artwork, even if it's, not the most in-depth animation, the motion comic style, you kind of get used to it. So know what it is going in, and you can have fun with it, but it's not just, hey, Creepshow, it's a cartoon. It's more an interesting way to adapt these short stories into a visual medium, so know that going in, know what to expect. But yeah, I thought this was really fun. Let's go ahead and talk a bit about these two stories. First off, Survivor Type, Stephen King starring Kiefer Sutherland, and he does a really good job. Sutherland with a really good, deep, drawn-out voice, and you get to see the sense of this character through his reading. It's really great. But this is a very grueling Stephen King story, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't think it had been adapted by a big studio before. I mean, I'm sure it had $1 Million Babies, but I don't think this had been adapted by a big studio before, but it's one that I still remember pretty well, and I'm like, oh, wow, I gotta admit, whenever I saw they were doing Survivor Type, I was pretty excited. It's a really grueling and dark story, but you get this guy, he survives a boat wreck, and he washes up on a little island with a dead body and a couple of seagulls land on it, but other than that, it's not much. It's just a little patch of rocks with nothing going on. No resources, no food. It is just tiny little speck in the middle of the ocean. Well, he's there, he's trying his best to survive, he's trying to catch a few of the gulls and having a little bit of a success, but he breaks his foot and realizes, oh man, I may have to amputate, and the story gets deeper and darker from there, and it's got some pretty horrific moments and some pretty cool gore with it. In addition to just being stuck on the island, you find out about this guy's past. Even before he was on an island, he was a survivor type. He was born in the city without much opportunity, and he forced his way through life just fighting tooth and nail to get what he wanted, and he eventually became a doctor, and he eventually became successful, and of course this story will have ups and downs too, but you find he would do things like, oh man, I really need money to get through life, I'm gonna, steal a pad of blank prescriptions and sell those and make money super illegally through that. And you see him just trying to fight for his life, taking some very dark options. And it really is a cool character study, and it really is a cool, see what this guy will do to survive. He's a doctor, and he's like, how much shock can a patient take? Well, how badly does he want to live, And it is really cool. Now, I did love to see an adaptation of the story. This was pretty fun. But this is a very strange pick for animation. I mean, for one, most of the story takes place on one set with one character. It would have been a relatively easier story to do in real life, and I don't know why they took the one set, one character. I mean, there's other stuff, like through flashbacks and stuff, but I'm like, why would this be your candidate for an animated story? You think animated story, you pick something that's, bigger and over the top and something really hard to do. Remember that story in Night Shift where the little army men come to life? That would have been really good to see in animation. That'd be harder to do in real life. You could do a cool animated story there. This one, it's such a small scale. I don't know why they picked animation instead of live action for this. And plus, like, the gore, this story has a lot of gore for its scares. And that's something I can't help but think, if it was real life too, would have been really creepy and gross. So I don't know why. I mean, I guess the audiobook format really does help because there's so much narration and getting into the character's head. And the audiobook format makes sense for this one, and I get that. It's just animation as opposed to real life. It would be cheap to film, and seeing the gore in real life would have been pretty cool. I don't know why they didn't pick a more over-the-top story to be animated, but all that being said, it's still pretty fun, and it's a classic Stephen King story that I think is the first time it's brought to the screen by a big studio. someone correct me if I'm wrong, there's been so many little Stephen King adaptations, anthology films, and 1 or 2 episodes of an anthology TV show, so if I'm missing something, let me know. But overall, really fun. I just thought, it's kind of weird they picked this for animation. But speaking of big and over the top and perfect for animation, let's go to our next story. Twittering from the Circus of the Dead. This, a young girl makes a Twitter account, and the whole story is told through her perspective why she's live tweeting the events of her life. So each one of these is from a tweet, and I can imagine when this story was written down that it would visually look like a series of tweets. But yeah, it's her perspective in real time as things are happening. So we open up, it's a young teenage girl, her brother, and her parents, and they just had a disappointing vacation. I think it all got snowed out or something. So they've had a disappointing vacation, and they're driving home, and the family's at high tension with each other, and you see the daughter and the mother are really arguing. And now, a young teenage girl, especially an over-the-top one, and it's all through her social media, some people are going to find this character annoying. The actress portrays the character as it's supposed to be. It's just who the character is. A lot of people like, oh gosh, young people, social media. But that being said, you do get to see it's not just trying to ape what people say in social media. There is more to it. They really get into the relationship between the mother and the daughter, and you really kind of see the mother's being overly strict, but that is because she overall cares for her kid, but the kid's being rebellious and doesn't like it, but at the end of the day, it is still her mother, and the relationship is more drilled out than you give it credit for, but it is young people social media, so know that going in. So this goes on for a bit. It has kind of a long introduction. You get to meet the characters and stuff, but I'm like, okay, where is this story going? And then it gets to where it's going, and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. So they're driving down a dark desert road, or well, maybe it's daylight, but they're driving down a desert road, and there's a detour, so they have to take this weird little path, and it leads them by a special circus, and they're like, hey, let's get out. It's the Circus of the Dead, and this circus is a themed circus where you see this lady's on stilts surrounded by zombies, and she's like, I've been trapped at this circus for 6 weeks. Guys, somebody send help. And all the zombies are down there around her, and they do zombie acts. They put a zombie in a cannon and shoot him out. All the zombies are pawing at the lady at stilts, trying to get at her. And it's all these things that you can do. Release a lion and watch it attack the zombies. It's crazy and over the top, and you're doing animation? This totally makes sense for animation. It would take a lot more effort to build this big set, fill the crowd with people, dress up, 50 actors as zombies, and pull off all the special effects for every little thing a zombie does. So this one makes sense for animation, and you get to see all these crazy zombies. Some of them are dressed as clowns, and they're going to do these gags, and they think, okay, this is a themed zombie horror circus. Zombies are all the rage, right? And you get to see them slowly understanding this might not just be a themed circus, this might all be real. And plus, in this one, the art style, this is the Joe Hill story. If you read the comic book adaptation of the Joe Hill Tales from the Dark Side series, the artwork reminds me a little bit of that, so cool to see consistency there. That may just be me. Other people may read that and go, the artwork's totally different. But I really did like this one. It was really cool, big, over the top, a circus full of zombie clowns. How can you not like that? Well, not everybody's going to get on board with the choice of narrator, but still, it's a circus full of zombie clowns. It pays off. At first you're like, okay, where's this going? I'm listening to social media feed, blah, blah, blah. But then when it gets going, this is one of those that when it gets going, fun zombie clown action. And I really wish that they could have poured a ton more money into the animation and given us some really cool over-the-top zombie clown moments. But, it's it's really fun, and I did like this story a whole lot. You know, really cool Creepshow cartoon. And overall, you know, I'd like to, you know, I'd like to see more Creepshow specials. They have a holiday special for Christmas that I'll be covering as well. But the idea of, okay, it's a one-off, we're doing whatever we want, we can make it even more random and loosely connected than Creepshow normally is. And I do kind of like the audiobook format for if there's anything else, you know, that, you know, it's a good short story. I know Stephen King has a ton of them. I can totally see a bunch more stories going through this process and really working. So I would like to see more of these, but I would at the same time also like to see a more traditionally animated one. So yeah, I don't know. I like this. I'd be interested to see more, and I'd be interested to see them try other things. You know, maybe even do a Creepshow anime special. You know, set a bunch of horror stories in Japan. That would be interesting. And I hope this gets a Blu-ray release. I'm not sure how they're doing that since this is not a non-season episode. Maybe do a few specials and put them all in a pack or something. I don't know. I hope this gets a physical media release. I will definitely buy it. But anyway, that's the Creepshow animated special. Audiobooks over motion comics. As long as you know that when you go in, you can have lots of fun. Because it's a good classic Stephen King story and a good classic Joe Hill story. I really do like it. So, all that being said, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll put a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Creepshow playlist. If you guys want to see me review other episodes of the series, you can find them in this playlist. Anyway, I'll see you guys again very, very soon. I'll get to more Creepshow soon, I hope. And have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Creepshow playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.